Hey guys, it's Darwin here with my post PCT Thru-Hike gear list. Now, before I hit the trail to hike 2,652 miles from Mexico to Canada, I had my pack pretty well dialed in and had all my gear figured out. However, whenever you spend 4 to 6 months on a thru-hike, gear is bound to change, and this hike was no exception for me. If you haven't had a chance to check out my pre-thru-hike gear list, I'll put it down in the description box. Plus, I'll put a link up here somewhere so you can go check out all the gear that I started the trail with. Now, I'd say overall, I ended up finishing at the northern terminus with about 90% of the gear that I started with, but there was definitely some gear that I changed out along the way, especially over the last 500 miles. So let's open up my pack, I'll spread out all my gear, and I'll show you what I finished the trail with.
So let's go ahead and start off with the pack that I ended up finishing the trail with. This is the Waymark Thru 40. Now the Thru 40 is a frameless pack that is made out of Zpacks, and it has a removable hip belt. I ended up switching to this pack in Cascade Locks, Oregon, right at the state line between Washington and Oregon, and used it exclusively over the last 500 miles. I liked it a lot because it was really simple, nice and lightweight, and I was able to remove the hip belt when I had a lighter load in the pack. And then when I was coming out of a town and had a little bit of a heavier load, I could put the hip belt on to help with the extra weight. Now I will be doing a full-on 500-mile review of that pack, so keep an eye out for that. Next up is the tent that I carried all the way from Mexico to Canada, and that is my Zpacks Duplex. I have had that tent for a couple years now and have over 3,000 miles on it, but overall it is one of my favorite tents that I've ever owned, and I can't really say enough good things about it. I will be doing a 3,000 plus mile gear review on that, so stay tuned for that video. Moving over to the right is my sleep system. The pad that I used is the pad that I always use, which is the Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite, and that is a new one than the one that I started with. The old one that I had probably close to 4,000 miles on it, and it was starting to leak a little bit around the valve, so I ended up picking up this new one in Wrightwood, California, and it lasted me all the way to the end. It is a size large, and it is one of my favorite sleeping pads that I've ever used on any hike. Sitting next to that in a Zpacks stuff sack is my Enlightened Equipment Enigma 20. So that was a new quilt for me for this trail, and it worked out perfect. A 20-degree quilt was perfect for everything that I needed. It was good when it was warm outside, and it was good for the high elevation cold of the Sierra. A 20-degree works perfect for me, and I really enjoyed using the Enigma 20 on this trail. Moving down is my ass pad. That is the second ass pad that I've owned. That's the Thermarest Z-Seat, and that's the one that I picked up right after the Pinhoti Trail. There's not really much else I can say about it. I like having a butt pad, and they work out pretty well. Cruising down is my Sea to Summit Aeros Ultralight Pillow. I really enjoy having a pillow, and this thing I have had for quite some time. Still holding in there, still doing its job. Next to my pillow is a set of 8 titanium shepherd hook stakes. I did start off with one more. I did have 9 of them, but I ended up losing one somewhere along the trail. But that's why I was carrying an extra one just in case that happened, so I was glad that I did have one extra stake in my set. And sitting next to my stakes are my set of Goose Feet Gear down socks. I pretty much will not leave home without those things. They keep my feet nice, toasty, and warm, and I've had them for quite some time. And then usually I put these towards the end next to all the other stuff that I wear. And these are my trekking poles. These are my Black Diamond Ergo carbon cork poles. Now I've had these for a handful of years, but I did not start the trail with them. I actually started with a pair of Knock carbon cork trekking poles, and I broke them both in the Sierra, so I ended up switching to these right around Mammoth, and they are what I finished with. Next up is my quote-unquote cook system. Now for most of the trail, I did nothing but cold soaking. I only cooked when I was in the Sierra, but I ended up ditching my stove right after the High Sierras and went back to cold soaking. So that is the Vargo Bot 700, and it is essentially just a titanium cup with a sealed lid on it, and that is what I cold soaked all of my meals with. It worked out pretty good, but to be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna be continuing to use that in the future. Next to that is my new Sea to Summit Alpha Aluminum long-handled spoon. That is a replacement for my old long-handled spork that I used to have that I lost somewhere around Chester, California. Even though it's not the original one, it still does a pretty good job. And then both of those items are sitting on top of a Zpacks Cuban fiber food bag. That is the Blast food bag, I believe. And down here is a small rock bag with 50 foot of Z-line for being able to hang my bear bag in a tree to get it away from critters. Moving on up is my water filtration and storage system. So most of the time I was using either a Life water bottle or a Smart water bottle, or really any 1 liter disposable bottle I could find. And then I do replace the cap with the sports cap. Now I like the sports cap because I can use it to back flush my filter, and because I don't have to screw with unscrewing a cap to get a drink. So just much easier, so I do always replace my caps. And then sitting next to those is the new water filter that I picked up for the last 500 miles, and that is a Katadyn Be-Free 1 liter filter. It ended up working out really well for me, and I did like it quite a bit. It was nice to try something different because for the last handful of years, I basically always use a Sawyer squeeze. So it was nice just to kind of change it up and try something completely different. Next to that is my bag of first aid. So basically just a sewing kit, some ibuprofen, some Leuko tape, and yeah, that's basically it. And then a new item that I picked up in the Sierra, which is a trigger point massage ball. I basically used that for my IT band because I was having some IT band issues, so that was nice to be able to roll out that band and any muscles when I was at camp at night. Next up is my Tent Lab Deuce Spades trowel, and well, I hope you guys know what that's for. It's for digging cat holes, or you know, I can take a proper crap on the trail. Good and lightweight, worked out great. Cruising on down is my ditty bag. And in there I have a bunch of ditties. So that is a couple charging cables, charging block, toothbrush, a knife, some sunscreen, some lip balm, toothpaste, and a lighter. Now, not only did I keep my ditties in there, but I also kept some of my electronics in that bag. And speaking of bag, that is a Zpacks small roll top DCF bag. And some of the other stuff that I kept in that bag are my iPhone charging cable, a set of Skull Candy headphones, an SD card reader transferer, an extra SD card, my Yuko Air rechargeable headlamp that I modified with a shock cord, 3 extra camera batteries, which I started out with 2 batteries and I ended up getting 2 more, so I had 4 batteries total, an Anker 10,000 milliamp rechargeable battery, and the camera that I shot my entire PCT Thru-Hike on, which is the Canon G7X Mark II, and that is sitting on an Ultrapod, which is an awesome little tripod that I ended up really loving. All right, so next up are a couple of other new items that I added to my pack along the way. That is a pack towel, micro fiber towel thing. Picked that up right before the Sierra so I could clean out my pod at night. I could dry my feet off if they were wet. Just kind of a multi-purpose towel. Next to that is a Sea to Summit bug net. That thing was a must-have in Southern Oregon and most of Washington. Cruising on down is my Zpacks Vertice rain jacket. Now, it came in handy pretty good for a extra layer for warmth when I was in the Sierra. But out of every single day I was on the trail, it never really did rain. So I can't really speak much to it being a good rain jacket on the PCT because I didn't have any rain. It was, however, an excellent layer against the cold. And I would usually layer and put that on top of my Enlightened Equipment Torrid Apex jacket. That is my 7D version. And if you want to find out more info on that, I've done a review on that in the past, so go check that out. Next up are the clothes that were in my pack. So I have my Icebreaker merino wool t-shirt that I basically just slept in every night. I didn't really use it for anything else. Every once in a while I would throw it on when I was in a town if I was doing laundry, but basically that was just my sleeping shirt. My handmade, hand-knitted beanie that I've had for years. Great to keep my head warm. I had an extra set of darn tough socks in case my other ones got wet, or just to swap out socks every day. And then a set of Enlightened Equipment 7D wind pants. Those really came in handy when I was in some hardcore mosquito territory, just to give me some extra coverage on my legs. So basically all of that was what was in my pack. So now let's talk about some of the things that were not in my pack and that was on my person. Long loved, forever owned Buff Original. That is not the UV buff that I started out with. I actually ended up losing my UV buff and had to get my original one back. So it's kind of cool though. I got to finish the PCT with the same buff that I carried for the entire AT. So pretty awesome. Down here is my Columbia Silver Ridge shirt. I did pick up that shirt while on the trail. My original one got a massive tear in the shoulder, so I did have to replace it out on the trail. Same one as the last shirt that I had, except for this one is a snazzy plaid. A pair of Nike running shorts. Those are the same ones that I started with, and the same shorts that I used on the Pinhoti Trail. The shoes that I finished with were new for me for the last 700 miles, and these are the Ultra Olympus 3.0. Now, the reason I switched to them wasn't because there was anything wrong with my Lone Peak 3.5s. I just could not find a pair in my size anywhere. So I ended up trying these on at an outfitter in Bend, Oregon, and absolutely fell in love with them. Again, I will do a full gear review of those, my thoughts on them, and I will compare them to my Lone Peaks. On up, we have the socks that I always wore, which were a pair of darn tough merino wool socks. And I ended up finally picking up a pair of sock liners. I did start the trail without sock liners, but ended up deciding to switch to them. And then last but not least is the hat that I wore for all 2,652 miles. That is my Arizona Trail mesh back hat, one of my favorite hats that I do own. So the only thing that I actually forgot and left out was my phone. That is the iPhone 7 Plus, which was great. It's a phone, it took pictures, it let me use my app on the trail. So my total final base weight, which does include the phone, but does not include the clothes that were on my back, my food, water, or trekking poles, ended up being 10 pounds and 8 ounces. So 10 pounds and 8 ounces to finish the PCT with was not too shabby.
All right, guys, that is it. That is everything that I reached Canada with on my 2,652 mile through hike of the PCT this year. Overall, I was really happy with my pack setup that I finished with, and pretty happy with everything that I carried all the way from the beginning. Now, the main reason I switched out a lot of that gear wasn't because there was anything wrong with my old gear, it's just because I wanted to try some new stuff out, and what better place to test new gear than the last 500 miles of the PCT. There was nothing wrong with my old water filtering system. My Zpacks Arc Blast is ready for another through hike. And the only reason I switched out my shoes was, well, because I couldn't find another pair of 3.5s in my size. I will be doing a full review of a bunch of the gear that I carried on the PCT, including a 500 mile gear review of the Waymark Thru 40 and a 3,000 plus mile gear review of my Zpacks Duplex, just to name a couple. So stay tuned for those. If you haven't had a chance yet, go over and check me out on Instagram. I've been posting a ton of new photos lately of some of the adventures that Snuggles and I have coming up, plus a bunch of pictures from my PCT through hike. If you found any value in this video, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always guys, thanks for watching.